The chamber is open and full of whispers.
The lorry arrives on a Sunday. Harry Potter does not see it at first. He is looking at weeds. He is 5 years old and small for it, the kind of small that comes not from genes but from portions, from a chair at the corner of the table and a plate that gets filled last. He is wearing a shirt that belonged to Dudley before Dudley outgrew it, which means it is large enough to serve as a kind of tent. The collar dropping off one shoulder, the hem hanging past his knees. He is in the front border of number 4, crouched down between the begonias, pulling at the roots of things Petunia has designated as unacceptable. He does not know all their names yet. He knows that if he leaves them, there will be consequences. That is enough. The street is quiet the way Privet Drive is always quiet. The managed, performed quiet of people who have agreed, without speaking, to pretend that everything is fine. Somewhere down the road, a mower runs. A television murmurs through the wall of number 4. The Dursleys are inside, doing Sunday things, Vernon in his chair, Dudley on the carpet with his new game, Petunia in the kitchen producing smells that Harry is aware he will not benefit from. He pulls a weed, reaches for another. The lorry parks. He hears it before he sees it, the low groan of a large vehicle slowing, the hydraulic sigh of brakes, and he almost looks up. He stops himself. Looking up at interesting things is a mistake he has made before. The weeds are what matter. The weeds are what will determine whether this afternoon is ordinary or something else. So he does not see the lorry back into the driveway of number 6. He does not see the men climb out, or the ramp extend, or the first boxes appear. He does not see any of it. But someone sees him. Hermione Granger is 6 years and 2 months old. She is standing on the pavement in front of number 6, in a cardigan slightly too large, because she is between sizes and her mother hasn't had time to buy the next one up, and she is holding 4 books against her chest the way other children hold toys, not possessively, but carefully, with the specific care of someone who understands that these objects contain things that cannot be replaced. The removals men offered to take them. She said no. She said it politely, but she said it the way her mother uses when she is not asking. She is watching the removals men and doing the small internal calculations that 6-year-olds who read too much are prone to. How heavy is that box? Is that a mirror wrapped in the brown paper? Is the garden bigger than the one at the last house? When she sees the boy, he is crouched in the border of the house next door. She can see the back of his neck, which is brown from a summer of outdoor work, and his hands moving through the dirt and the shirt hanging off him. She can see that he is doing this alone. She can see, even at this distance, even at 6, that he is small. She does not have the word for what happens in her chest. She has a very large vocabulary for a 6-year-old. She has been told this so often it has stopped meaning anything, but she does not yet have this word. Later, she will. She will call it recognition. Not of a face, of a condition. She watches him for a moment. He does not look up. One of the removals men says something to her. She turns back to the business of moving in. But she does not forget. 3 days later, Petunia Dursley arrives at number 6 with a casserole. This is important to understand. Petunia is very good at casseroles. The casserole is not an act of generosity. It is an instrument of social establishment, a way of arriving first, of setting terms, of making sure that the first impression this new family has of Privet Drive comes through Petunia's hands. She has spent 45 minutes arranging the dish, and another 20 deciding what to wear. Helen Granger opens the door and accepts the casserole and makes tea, because that is what you do. Petunia Dursley sits at the kitchen table of number 6, holds her mug in both hands, and tells Helen Granger about the boy at number 4. She is careful. She is pleasant. She is the version of herself she uses when she wants to seem like she is doing someone a favor. She says, troubled. She says, bad stock. She says his parents were dreadful people and that there is something wrong with him. Has always been something wrong, and that for the sake of their daughter, and here she gestures, vaguely, towards somewhere Hermione might be, they really ought to keep her away. Just to be safe. Just to be careful. Helen Granger nods. She thanks Petunia for the casserole. She does not promise anything. That evening, after Hermione is in bed and Richard is washing up. Helen stands in the kitchen doorway and tells her husband what she observed. Not what Petunia said. What she observed. The boy in the border. The clothes. The way Petunia's warning had the shape of concern and the weight of something else entirely, something that was less about the boy's nature and more about keeping him at a distance. Which was not the same thing. Not at all. Richard dries a plate. Helen says, she was more interested in the warning than the welfare. He nods. He is a quiet man who has been married to Helen Granger for 9 years, and has learned that when she makes an observation in that tone, it is not the beginning of a conversation. It is the end of one. They do not tell Hermione to stay away from the boy next door. Hermione finds this out, the not being told, on a Thursday morning when she sees the boy in the front garden again. She has been watching for him since Sunday. She does not examine this impulse. She is 6. Impulses are not yet something she examines. He is there before she is, already crouched in the border, already working. The shirt is different but the same, too big, washed thin, hanging off him. His hands are careful in the dirt, the way hands get when they have learned that careless work has costs. She goes outside with a book. She sits on the front step of number 6, which faces the same general direction as the front border of number 4, and she reads. After 20 minutes, she looks up. He has noticed her. He is watching her the way small things watch larger things from cover, not afraid exactly, but calibrated. Alert, she holds up the book so he can see the cover. Greek myths for young readers. She does not know why she does this. She does not examine that either. He looks at the book, then at her, then back at the book. Is it good? He says. His voice is careful, the same way his hands are careful. Yes, she says. There's one about a man who steals fire from the gods to give to people who don't have it. They chain him to a rock forever as punishment. A pause. A long one. That doesn't seem fair. Harry says. No, Hermione agrees. It doesn't. She goes back to her book. He goes back to his weeds. But neither of them is entirely concentrated on what they are doing, and both of them know it, and neither of them says so. This is, though neither of them has a word for it yet, the beginning. Summer turns. The borders are tidy. The Dursleys go on holiday to Majorca and take Dudley and leave Harry with Mrs. Figg, who smells of cats and feeds him digestive biscuits and is, by some margin, the kindest adult he has encountered in recent memory. The kindness of low bars. Hermione reads 17 books before September. She counts. She starts counting, that summer, without knowing exactly why, as though quantity can shore up something that needs shoring. As though if she reads enough, she will find the right framework. The right story. The one that explains the things she sees from the window of number 6, the small figure in the too big shirt, the careful hands, the way he moves through the world like someone who has learned that taking up space is a risk. She doesn't find the story. Not yet. But she keeps counting. Next door, in the cupboard under the stairs, Harry Potter falls asleep to the sound of the Dursleys' television, and he thinks about fire, and gods, and whether the man on the rock ever stopped thinking it was worth it. He decides he probably did. He decides, just as quietly, that he probably also never stopped thinking it was. Summer 1986. Harry is 6. Dudley is eating a biscuit. This is the detail Hermione will carry longest, not the weeding, not the heat, not the hour. The biscuit. Chocolate digestive, she thinks, though she is too far away to be certain. What she is certain of is this. Dudley is standing in the doorway of number 4 eating it, and Harry is on his knees in the front drive pulling at something stubborn in the gravel, and Dudley does not offer one, does not look at him, does not acknowledge that a person is there, 3 feet away, doing work that Dudley will not do and has never done and will never be asked to do, just stands and eats and watches the street like Harry is part of the gravel. Like Harry is furniture that has learned, inconveniently, to breathe. Hermione is 7. She is standing at her bedroom window with a glass of orange juice her mother brought up 20 minutes ago, and she is watching. And something in her chest that she does not yet know how to name is getting very, very still. She drinks the orange juice. She does not look away. This is what Hermione Granger's summers become, between 7 and 11, not all of them, not every hour. She has her books, her mother's dental practice to visit on slow Tuesdays, her father's record collection to catalog, her own ambitious reading lists that she writes in a purple notebook and crosses off with particular satisfaction. She has a life of texture and warmth, and 2 parents who ask her about her opinions at dinner and listen to the answers. But the window is always there. And Harry is often in the garden. And Hermione, who has always been constitutionally incapable of looking away from a problem. Watches. Summer 1987. He is 7. She is 8. The garden fence needs painting. Vernon has decided this on a Saturday morning. Hermione can tell from the way Harry appears at 7:30 with a bucket and a brush. No preamble. No one helping. The brush has a cracked handle. She can see this from 30 feet. The crack runs up from the base and someone has wrapped electrical tape around it, which has held but not fixed anything. He starts at the far end and works methodically. She recognizes the methodology now, the way he does not rush, does not cut corners, covers each board completely before moving to the next. She recognized it last summer with the weeding. It is the methodology of someone who has learned that the cost of imperfect work is higher than the cost of slow work. He has done this arithmetic. He has been doing it for years. Petunia supervises from the kitchen window. Hermione can see her there, a shape behind the glass, occasionally visible, and occasionally not. 40 minutes into the painting, Petunia opens the window. She calls something. Harry flinches. He flinches before the window is all the way open, before whatever word Petunia has for him arrives. The sound of the window moving is enough, the rattle of the old frame, the particular pitch of it, and his shoulders come up and his head goes down, and his hand tightens on the cracked handle of the brush. Then Petunia speaks. He adjusts, goes back 3 boards and covers a patch he missed. He does not look up. Hermione steps back from the window. She sits on the edge of her bed. She is 8 years old, and she is angrier than she has ever been, and she has no object for the anger that will do anything useful, so she picks up her book and opens it to the wrong page, and stares at words she is not reading until the feeling becomes something she can carry, rather than something that is carrying her. It takes 11 minutes. She counts. Summer 1988. 9 now, both of them nearly. He is mowing the lawn. The mower is a push model, old and too large for him. The handles come up past his shoulders and he has to grip it from a slightly wrong angle, slightly too high, which means his arms tire faster than they should. She watches him work out this problem in real time. Watches him shift his grip, try a different posture, find the configuration that lets him continue. He is meticulous. The lines are straight. She times 40 minutes of it from her window. She is reading A Little Princess at the same time. She has been meaning to read it since February. She stops at the chapter where Sarah Crewe is moved from her room at the top of the school to the attic, where Miss Minchin, who was always going to do this, finally does it, where Sarah, who was always going to be there, finally arrives. Hermione reads that chapter and looks at the window, and looks at the book, and does not finish the chapter. She will not finish the book that year. She knows this the moment she closes it. She picks up a different book. She does not pick up A Little Princess again until she is 15, and when she does, she will read it in a single sitting and cry once, briefly, at a specific sentence, and not explain to anyone why. September 1989. She is 10. He is 9. She is at her window. She is often at her window in September, which is the month she hates most, because September means school starting, and school means a different kind of watching. The kind where you notice exactly how many people want to be near you and count the answer and find it inadequate. When Harry comes home, he is carrying something. A folded piece of paper. His report card, she decides. The shape is right, and the way he is holding it is the way you hold something you are required to deliver and uncertain about. Petunia meets him at the gate. She takes the card. Reads it. And her face does something Hermione watches very carefully, because Hermione has been watching faces for 4 years, and she is good at it now, better than she should be at 10. Petunia's face moves through several things in the space of a few seconds. The last thing it settles on is not pride. It is not anger, either. It is something harder to name. Something that looks almost like the face Hermione's mother makes when a thing confirms what she already suspected, except without the satisfaction. More like the face you make when you wanted to be wrong and weren't. Harry takes the card back, goes inside. Hermione stands at the window for a while after. She has known, for 2 years, that Harry is intelligent. She knows this the way she knows facts she has not been told directly, through inference, through pattern, through the accumulation of small evidence that eventually tips into certainty. The way he solved the garden fence problem. The way he listened to her about the Prometheus myth and asked the right question immediately. The question that went to the center of the thing. The careful quality of his attention. He hides it. She does not know why yet, but she can see the hiding, the way you can see the outline of something under a cloth even when the thing itself is out of sight. She files this. She files everything. She is 10 years old, and she has no framework yet for what she is doing, but she is doing it with the thoroughness she brings to everything, which is to say, completely. Christmas 1989. She has been leaving books. It started in October. Quietly, without a plan. She finished D'Aulaire's book of Greek myths, the real one, the illustrated one her father bought her when she was 7, and she stood outside with it for 10 minutes before she knew what she was going to do. She put it on the low wall between the properties, the wall between the front drives, the one that comes up to her knee and Harry's knee. She put it there in the morning. By afternoon it was gone. She did not tell anyone. She left another one in November, then 2 in December, before the school holidays. On Christmas Eve she finds a folded piece of paper on the wall, her name on the outside in handwriting that is careful and slightly cramped, the handwriting of someone who has taught himself without being taught. Inside, thank you for all of them. 5 words. She counts them 3 times. She puts the note in the purple reading notebook, between the October and November lists. And she closes the notebook and puts it back on the shelf and goes downstairs for Christmas Eve dinner. She does not say anything. At the table her father asks what she is thinking about. He asks this most dinners. She says nothing. He does not believe her. She can tell. He lets it go anyway, which is its own kind of gift. The gift of not being required to perform transparency before she is ready. She eats her dinner. Through the kitchen window number 4 is lit from inside, warm and yellow and completely ordinary. She thinks. 5 words. She thinks. He counted them 2. She is almost certain of it. The little winging public library smells like radiator dust and old paper, and something faintly chemical that Hermione has decided is the smell of binding glue, aging in fluorescent light. She has been coming here since she was 4. She knows every section. She knows which shelves lean and which drawers of the card catalog stick, and which librarian, Mrs. Alderton, Tuesdays and Thursdays, will let her take out 6 books instead of 4 if she can demonstrate she has finished the previous 6. She is 10 years old, and she has read approximately 1/3 of the children's section, and is beginning, with quiet determination, to negotiate access to the adult stacks. Harry is here too. This is new. She sees him on a Tuesday in January 1990, in the 500s, the science and nature section, which is not where she expected him, because she had not expected him at all. He is sitting cross-legged on the floor between 2 shelves with a book open across his knees. He is reading with the focused stillness of someone who has found a place where no one is going to ask him to do anything, and has decided to stay as long as possible. The book is about astronomy. The cover shows a spiral galaxy against a field of black. Hermione stops at the end of the aisle. He has not seen her. She observes the way his finger traces a line of text without touching the page, hovering just above it. The careful distance, like he has learned to want things without quite making contact with them. She goes to find her own books. She does not announce herself. But she comes back to the 500s before she leaves, and she is not entirely surprised to find he is still there. They settle into it without deciding to. Tuesdays and Thursdays. The library. They do not arrive together or leave together. They sit in different sections mostly, but there is a table near the window, the one with the wobbly leg that the library has been meaning to fix for 3 years. And by February it has become, through the quiet accumulation of habit, theirs. They do not talk much. This surprises her, later when she thinks about it, that the friendship established itself so completely in a space made mostly of silence. But the silence between them has always been different from other kinds of silence. It is not empty. It has the quality of two people reading in the same room, who are aware of each other in the useful, undemanding way of people who do not require performance. Harry reads widely and without pattern, which is different from how Hermione reads, but she comes to understand that his approach has its own logic. He is not looking for a subject. He is looking for a world, any world that is not Privet Drive, that operates by different rules, where the ratio of fair to unfair is better than the one he is currently living under. He reads astronomy, and then folklore, and then a book about the history of bridges, and then 3 novels in a row, fast, the way you drink when you are very thirsty. She lends him books from her own stack. He returns them quickly and without notes, but she can tell he has read them. There is a quality to how he handles a book he has read, a certain ease, the ease of something already known. She starts choosing what she lends him with some care. Not guidance. Exactly. More like curation. March 1990. She is in the reference section looking for something on medieval property law. She has been reading about inheritance, and has followed a thread that has led her here, as threads often do, when she sees the file. It is not hidden. It is in the local history cabinet, which is open to the public and has been there for years, and which Hermione has used before for a school project on the history of Surrey. It is a collection of local newspaper clippings, organized by year, going back to 1955. She is not looking for 1981. She is not looking for anything related to the Potters. But she is Hermione Granger, and she reads the labels on things, and the label on the folder for November 1981 includes the words Godric's Hollow and Unexplained Incident and Infant Survivor, and her hand stops moving. She sits down. She reads. The clippings are thin. 3 of them from 2 different papers, the kind of local coverage that exists because something happened close enough to matter geographically, but strange enough that no one quite knew what angle to take. The facts as reported: a house in Godric's Hollow, destroyed. 2 adults, dead. 1 child, unharmed. Cause of the explosion under investigation. The child, a boy, taken in by relatives. No explanation. The investigation, as far as the clippings go, produced nothing. The follow-up article is 4 inches long and buried on page 12. Hermione reads all 3 twice. She is 10 years old and she is very good at reading, which means she is very good at reading what is not there. What is not there? Any cause. Any rational account of how an explosion destroys a house and kills 2 adults and leaves an infant on the floor with a cut on his forehead. Any source who is willing to be named. Any follow-up that goes anywhere. What is there? The name, Potter. The address. The date, Halloween, 1981. The child, described once, in 1 clipping, as apparently uninjured except for a minor laceration above the left eye. She closes the folder. The library is very quiet around her. The ambient sounds, the heating system, the distant page turn of Mrs. Alderton at the front desk, the faint traffic from the street outside, seem to have moved a long way back. What she is inside right now is her own thinking, which is fast and very still at the same time, the way it gets when she has found the center of something. She does not know what magic is. She will not know for another 18 months, when her letter arrives and a woman named Professor McGonagall sits in the Grangers' living room and explains it to the family in careful, precise terms that Helen Granger will ask 3 follow-up questions about. But she is 10 years old, and she has been watching Harry Potter for 4 years, and she has been cataloging, and the catalog now includes the way locks open for him when he is frustrated. The time she saw him on the roof of the school kitchen, she has never been able to account for this, has filed it under unresolved, and left it there. The plants in the Dursleys' garden that grow faster on the side closest to the cupboard window. She takes out her purple notebook. She writes 3 words at the top of a clean page, in small letters, pressed hard. What is he? She looks at it, crosses it out, writes again. What is this? Better, more honest. The question is not only about Harry. The question is about the file, and the plants, and the roof, and the thing she has been watching from her window for 4 years, without a framework to put it in. She is going to need a framework. She does not tell Harry what she found. Not that day, not that week. She goes back to the table by the wobbly-legged window and she reads her medieval property law, and he reads a book about deep-sea fish that he has brought from the nature section, and they sit in the same comfortable silence they always sit in, and she watches him from the corner of her eye and thinks. She is thinking about the cuts that heal faster than they should. About the way Mrs. Fig always seems to know things before they happen. About the word in the clipping, uninjured, and the scar she has seen on his forehead every day for 4 years, the one shaped like a bolt of lightning, the one he keeps covered with his fringe. She is thinking about the Prometheus myth, which she told him about on a front doorstep when they were 6 and 7, and which he understood immediately, the first time, without having to be told what it meant. A man who carries something the world gave him without asking, chained for it, for what was done to him, not by him. She looks at him. He has found something in the fish book that interests him. She can tell from the slight forward tilt, the way the stillness deepens rather than disperses. He is reading about bioluminescence. Light produced from within. Light that exists in the deep dark not because anything outside is shining on it, but because the organism itself has learned, somehow, to make its own. She writes something else in the purple notebook. Below the crossed-out question, below the better question. 2 words. This time, find out. Summer 1990. Harry is 10. The cupboard is smaller than it used to be, which is not possible because cupboards do not shrink. But he has grown, which produces the same effect, and so he wakes up each morning with his knees at a new angle, and the shelf pressing closer, and the dark feeling more specifically like the inside of something that was not designed for a person. He does not think about this too hard. Thinking too hard about the cupboard produces a feeling he has no use for. What he thinks about instead, the library. The fish book. The section on bioluminescence, which he has thought about more than he expected. The idea of an organism that produces its own light, not because conditions are good, but because conditions are not. Because the dark is total, and the choice is between making something and having nothing. He thinks about this on the mornings when the shelf presses close. It helps. Slightly, that is all he needs it to do. July. A Tuesday. Which means the library, which means Hermione. He is halfway down the front path when Vernon appears in the doorway. Vernon in the doorway is a specific event with a specific character. He fills it not just physically, though he fills it that way too, the width of him against the frame, but atmospherically. The temperature changes. The air goes from ordinary to something that requires careful navigation, the way air near a wasp's nest requires careful navigation. Not because anything has happened yet, but because the potential is present and you have learned to feel it. Where do you think you're going? Vernon says. Not a question. The syntax of a question with the architecture of a wall. Library, Harry says. Library. Vernon tastes the word like it is something left out too long. What for? Reading. This is, Harry has learned, the wrong answer. Reading is the kind of answer that produces a certain look from Vernon, a look that travels from contempt through something more complicated, and arrives, usually, at suspicion, as if the act of reading is itself an aggression, a claim on something Harry has no right to claim. He has tried other answers. Homework works better. But it is July and there is no homework, and the lie would need maintenance. Library, Vernon says again. You've got work to do. Harry looks at the front border. The front border is immaculate. He spent Monday on it. There is genuinely nothing left to do in the front border, and they both know it. Vernon knows. Harry knows this. This is not a conversation about the front border. Back garden, Vernon says. The edging. The edging does not need doing. Harry did it 9 days ago and nothing has grown back. He knows this because he checked this morning automatically, the way he checks all assigned territories each morning, a habit of preemptive audit that he developed at 7 and which has served him in the way that all defensive preparations serve, quietly, invisibly, in the negative space of punishments that do not happen because the work was already done. He says, "I did it last week." Vernon's expression moves through something. Then, do it again. Hermione is at the library at 9:30. By 10, Harry has not arrived. By 15:15, she closes her book. She has not examined, precisely, what it means that she can tell the difference between Harry being late and Harry not coming. They have been meeting here for 8 months and he has never been more than 20 minutes late, and when he was late he arrived with his jaw set in a particular way that she has come to read as, "It was difficult to leave." She knows what makes it difficult to leave. She has been watching for 4 years. She puts her books in her bag. She tells Mrs. Alderton she'll be back this afternoon. She walks to Privet Drive. She hears Vernon before she reaches the gate. Not words. Volume. The specific volume that carries through a front door, left slightly ajar on a warm July morning. The kind of volume that is not for communicating but for establishing. For pressing something down until it stays pressed. Harry is in the hallway. She can see him through the frosted glass panel of the front door. A shape, small, still. Vernon's shape is larger, closer. She cannot see Petunia. Dudley is not visible either, which means he is somewhere being protected from this. Which means someone has decided that Dudley should not see this, which means someone knows it is the kind of thing that should not be seen. Hermione opens the gate. She walks up the front path of number 4. She rings the bell. Silence. Inside, the kind that follows a sudden stop. The door opens. Vernon fills the frame and looks down at her with an expression that starts as surprise and becomes, almost immediately, something more managed. She is a child from next door. She is a girl, with a school bag. She has a mother who brings things over, and a father who nods at Vernon over the fence. She is, in Vernon Dursley's taxonomy, a neighbor's child, which means she is performed at rather than dealt with. "Yes," he says. "Hello, Mr. Dursley," Hermione says. "I'm sorry to bother you. I was wondering if Harry could come to the library. We have a school project we need to finish before September." She pauses. Adds, "It's for history. Mrs. Donovan assigned it in June. There is no Mrs. Donovan. There is no project." She says it the way her mother says things she has decided are true, plainly, with the cadence of the already established. Vernon looks at her. She holds his gaze without effort because she has been practicing, for 4 years, holding her feelings in her chest where they will not show on her face, and this is the same skill applied to a different problem. "He's got work to do," Vernon says. "I know," Hermione says. "I can see the garden looks lovely. You must work very hard on it." A beat. "Mrs. Donovan said it has to be a joint project. I can't complete my portion without Harry's part. If it's not finished, I'll have to tell her why, and she'll probably write a letter." She meets his eyes. She writes quite a lot of letters. This is precise. She has calibrated it exactly. Not a threat. Never a threat. A threat is aggressive and gives him something to push against. This is a consequence, neutral and administrative. The kind Vernon Dursley would understand because Vernon Dursley is a man who has spent his life managing appearances, and a letter from a teacher is an appearance problem. And appearance problems are the only kind he takes seriously. Vernon looks at her for a long moment. "An hour," he says. Harry appears in the doorway a minute later with his shoes and his expression arranged into something neutral. He steps out. The door closes behind him. They walk down the front path. Through the gate. Onto the pavement. He does not say anything for half a street. She does not say anything either. Then, there's no project. "No," she agrees. "Another half a street." He would have kept going, Harry says. Not an accusation. An observation, careful and flat. The way he states most things he knows to be true but which have no solution. "Yes," Hermione says. So, he is working something out. She can feel it. The way you can feel someone thinking beside you when you have sat beside them in a library for 8 months. You came. You weren't at the library. You came because I wasn't at the library. She considers this. I came because I knew why you weren't at the library. He goes quiet again. They walk. The street opens up toward the main road, and the sounds of a Tuesday in July, a bus, someone's radio, two boys on bikes who are not them, fill the space between the last sentence and whatever comes next. "Thank you," Harry says. He says it the same way he wrote the note at Christmas, carefully, slightly cramped, as if gratitude is a word he has had to teach himself, and is not yet entirely certain he is pronouncing correctly. She nods. They reach the library. She holds the door. He walks in ahead of her and goes directly to the 500s, because this is what he does, and she goes to find her medieval property law, because this is what she does, and they settle at the table by the wobbly window without discussing it, and the library does what it always does. It goes quiet around them in the specific way that rooms go quiet when the people inside them are, for the moment, safe. Hermione opens her book. Below the table, out of sight, she closes her hand into a fist once, briefly, and releases it. She has been waiting 4 years to do something. She thinks, that is not the last time. She is right. The letters arrive on a Tuesday. Harry's comes first, which is, in retrospect, the kind of detail that contains everything, because Harry's letter has been trying to arrive for weeks, has been multiplying in response to Vernon's increasingly desperate suppression tactics, has come through the letterbox and the eggs and the chimney with the specific persistence of something that knows where it is going and cannot be redirected. By the time the letter actually reaches Harry's hands, it has become almost mythological in the Dursley household, the thing Vernon could not stop, the thing Petunia knew about, and said nothing, and said nothing, and said nothing, until the nothing ran out. Hermione's arrives the same morning. She is eating breakfast. Her mother sets it beside her bowl without comment, and then sits down and picks up her own tea and waits, because Helen Granger has known, on some level, since the evening with the casserole and the observation she made to Richard afterward, that this morning, or one like it was coming. Hermione reads her letter once. Then again. Then she puts it down on the table and looks at her mother. Harry got one too, she says. She does not know this yet. She is certain of it. Probably, her mother says. Professor McGonagall comes on a Thursday. She sits in the Grangers' living room with a cup of tea she holds but does not drink and explains, in precise and measured terms, what Hermione is, what the school is, what will happen in September if the Grangers agree, which they will, which McGonagall appears to already understand, because she has the demeanor of someone delivering information rather than making a case. Helen asks 3 questions. Richard asks 1. Hermione asks 11. McGonagall answers all of them. She answers them the way people answer questions they have been asked before, but rarely this specifically, with something that might, on another face, be satisfaction. At the end, Hermione says, "My neighbor. Harry Potter. He'll be coming too." McGonagall sets down her untouched tea. Yes, he lives with his aunt and uncle. A pause. I want to make sure he knows about Diagon Alley. Someone might need to help him with the arrangements. McGonagall looks at her for a moment with an expression Hermione cannot fully read. Then, I will ensure Mr. Potter is properly informed. Hermione nods. This is not everything she wanted to say. She has a list, in the purple notebook, of things about Harry's situation that she has been cataloging for 5 years, and which she does not yet have the language or the authority to do anything about. She closes the list for now. September is coming. September is a new set of rules, and she has always been good at rules, which means she has always been good at finding what the rules make possible. She will find it. September 1st. King's Cross, platform 9 3/4, which is real, which is behind a barrier, which requires a running start and a particular variety of trust that Hermione manages by treating it as a physics problem. The barrier either works or it does not. And the evidence suggests it works, so she goes through it at a pace that is not quite running, because running in a train station is impractical. She is through. The train is red and enormous and pouring steam, and she stands on the platform and feels, for the first time in her life, that the world is larger than she knew it was, and that she is exactly the right size for it. Harry is already here. She finds him in the crowd. She has always been able to find him in a crowd, has never fully examined why, has decided, It is pattern recognition. And he is standing with his trunk and his owl, and an expression she knows. The one where he is taking in too much at once and processing it so fast that his face has gone very still, because stillness is what he does when the world exceeds his prepared categories. "You're here," he says. "I'm here," she says. His owl regards her with enormous amber eyes, and then looks away, as if satisfied. The Hogwarts Express takes 7 hours. They find a compartment. It fills. A red-haired boy named Ron Weasley arrives and stays, which is fine. He is fine. He has the comfortable, loud energy of someone who has never had to be quiet, and therefore radiates a kind of artless warmth that Hermione finds, if not immediately natural, at least genuine. She files him under provisional. She promotes him to trusted sometime around hour 4 when he shares his sandwiches without being asked. Harry sits across from her and watches Scotland arrive through the window, and she watches him watching it. And she thinks, he has never been anywhere. Privet Drive. Little Winging. Mrs. Fig's house. The library. The park. He has read about everywhere. He has never been. The mountains come. The sky turns the particular color of the end of the day. She sees the moment it lands on him, the moment Scotland through a train window becomes real rather than the category of real, and she looks out the window too, because this is one of those moments that does not need to be witnessed to exist. The Great Hall is the largest room Hermione has ever stood in, which is saying something because she has read extensively about large rooms and has been forming an imaginary architecture of them for years, and the room she built in her imagination is not this. The ceiling is the sky, she checks, later that it is bewitched, not actually open. She prefers to know the mechanism. And the candles are thousands, and the tables are long and full of faces looking at them with the specific curiosity of people watching something that is about to become official. She is not frightened. She catalogues this fact. Not frightened, precisely alert. The two states are different. The Sorting Hat sings. She listens to the whole song, takes notes internally, identifies the 4 houses and their primary characteristics, and begins, before the A's are called, to think about which one fits. This is what she knows about herself. She is thorough. She is strategic. She loves learning for its own sake, but she also loves learning as a tool. She is loyal in the specific way of people who are loyal to individuals rather than institutions. She is brave, but bravery is not what she is most essentially. She is intelligent in the way that produces results rather than the way that produces performance. She knows what the answer is. She has known since she read Hogwarts, A History on the Train. Granger, Hermione, the hall, the stool, the hat. It slides over her eyes and the world goes dim, and something old and dry and highly attentive settles around her like a second atmosphere, and she thinks, very clearly, before it can say anything, I know. A pause. Then, in the interior of her own head, something that is not her own voice. Yes. You do. Another pause. Shorter, Ravenclaw. The hat shouts it. There is a half-second. She will remember this half-second for years. Will bring it out and examine it occasionally the way you examine a particular stone you found once and kept. Of surprised quiet. Not from her. From the hall. The half-second where the room recalibrates. Because they were expecting something and got something adjacent to it. And the difference is small, but it is real. Then the Ravenclaw table erupts. Blue and bronze. The sound of it goes up into the candle smoke. She walks to the table. She sits. She looks across the hall to where Harry is still standing with the other not yet sorted students, and she finds him the way she always finds him. And he is looking at her, and his expression is the one she has no name for yet. The one that is not quite relief and not quite warmth and is something more specific than either. Something that requires its own word, which she does not have yet but will. He nods at her. She nods back. Potter, Harry, the hall goes different. She watches it go different, the shift in atmosphere that moves through the room like a change in pressure. The way heads turn and people lean and something collectively held gets released. That name, here. Now, at last. He walks to the stool. He sits. The hat falls over his eyes. She waits. He waits. The whole hall waits. The hat takes longer with him than it took with anyone else. 40 seconds. 50. She counts. At 60 she stops counting and watches his face instead, what she can see of it below the hat's brim, his jaw, his hands on his knees, the specific quality of his stillness which she has been reading for 6 years, and which is telling her, right now, that something is happening under that hat that requires his full attention. Then the hat opens its brim. Ravenclaw. The half-second again. Longer this time. Then the Ravenclaw table, her table, comes apart with noise, and somewhere in the noise she is on her feet without deciding to stand, and Harry is crossing the hall toward her with an expression that is trying to stay neutral and failing, and he sits down across from her in the blue and gold light of 100 floating candles, and looks at her, and she looks at him, and neither of them says anything, because they are both, in this moment, doing the same calculation, 5 years from number 4. From a cupboard. From a front border in a too big shirt. To here. He picks up a fork. She picks up a fork. The feast arrives. Above them the bewitched ceiling shows the first stars coming out over Scotland, one by one. The way things that have been there a long time become visible when the light finally gets dark enough to find them. The Ravenclaw common room is at the top of a tower. This is, Hermione decides on the first night, not incidental. The other common rooms are underground or embedded in Castle Rock or behind a portrait that opens with a password, horizontal secrets. Rooms you enter sideways through a gap in the ordinary. Ravenclaw is vertical. You earn it with a spiral staircase and a bronze knocker shaped like an eagle that asks you a question before it lets you in. And the question is never the same twice. And the answer is never a password. The answer is thinking. The answer is demonstrating, each time, that you can. She stands in front of the knocker on the first night, and it asks her, what can run but never walks? Has a mouth but never talks? Has a head but never weeps? Has a bed but never sleeps? She answers before the last word is finished. The knocker sounds like it approves. Inside, blue and bronze, bookshelves that cover every wall from floor to ceiling. A domed ceiling painted with stars that are not enchanted but accurate. A real star chart, rotating correctly, showing the sky above Scotland exactly as it is. A fireplace. Deep chairs. Windows that look out over the grounds in 3 directions. She stands in the middle of it and thinks, this was built for me. Then she thinks, and for Harry. Then she goes to find which bed is hers, and she does not see Harry until morning. And in the morning he tells her the common room is the first place he has ever been where he did not feel like he needed to calculate whether he was allowed to sit down. She files this in the purple notebook that night. She has brought it with her. She will fill 6 more before 7th year ends. Year 1 establishes its rhythms quickly, the way years do when they are full. Classes. Hermione discovers that magic has rules, which she already suspected. But the rules are deeper and stranger and more internally consistent than she anticipated, which means they are more interesting, which means she is more interested, which means she is, within 2 weeks, the best student in every class she attends. This is not performance. She is not performing. She is simply moving at her own speed for the first time and discovering that her own speed is fast. Harry is not far behind. This is, to most of their professors, slightly unexpected. He came from a Muggle household. He has no preparation. He should be behind. He is not behind. He is thorough, and he is persistent, and he has spent 5 years in a library developing habits of self-directed learning that no preparatory tutoring could have produced. Professor Flitwick marks his first charms essay with 3 stars and a note in the margin, unusual approach. Entirely correct. He shows Hermione the essay at the common room table by the window. She reads the margin note and looks at him and does not say I told you so, because she has not, technically, told him so. She has only known it. For years. He sees it on her face anyway. He goes back to his essay. Neither of them mentions it. This is sufficient. There is a troll on Halloween. This is, in canon, the moment that produces the friendship, the thing that throws Hermione and Harry and Ron together in a bathroom on the first floor and welds them, through shared adrenaline and shared survival, into something permanent. It is the moment that saves her in the original story from a year of loneliness. The difference, here, she is not lonely. She was not crying in the bathroom. She was in the Ravenclaw common room with Harry, working through a particularly resistant section of Professor Flitwick's reading on switching spells when the troll was released, and when the alarm went up, they were already together, which meant that when the professors herded students back to dormitories, Hermione was exactly where she was supposed to be. Ron Weasley, however, does not know about the troll before he says the thing he says in the corridor, the thing about showing off, about having no friends, the thing that is careless rather than cruel but lands the same way regardless. Hermione hears it. Harry, walking beside her, also hears it. She files it. She does not cry. Ron finds her the next morning at breakfast and apologizes with the thoroughness of someone who has spent the night feeling genuinely terrible. He says, "It was a rotten thing to say, and I didn't mean it, and I'm sorry." He says it simply, without architecture, and she decides this is more useful than a complicated apology would be. She accepts it. She means it. By November, Ron Weasley is provisional. By December, he is trusted. By Christmas, he is sitting in their window alcove eating every flavor beans and explaining the rules of Quidditch with his hands while Harry listens, and Hermione reads, and the fire is going, and the castle is quiet around them. And this, the three of them in the blue and bronze light, becomes the template, the thing they will return to. The base. Christmas, most students go home. Hermione goes home too, her parents, the familiar smell of the house, her mother's cooking, the record collection, the ordinary weight of ordinary days. She needs this. She has not known, before Hogwarts, that she would need it, has always been the kind of person who is sustained by internal resources. But magic takes something from you when you are new to it, some energy that has to be rebuilt in silence. Harry stays at Hogwarts. She knows this before she leaves. He tells her with the flatness he uses for facts that have stopped requiring commentary, the same flatness he used for the cupboard under the stairs when he told her in October, when she asked directly, when she sat across from him in the window alcove and said, "Where do you sleep at home?" And he told her. And she held her face exactly still and wrote in the purple notebook that night, and the entry for that night is 6 words long and she has never shown it to anyone. She writes him a letter from home. Then another. Then a third, because she has more to say than 2 letters hold. He writes back, shorter letters, more concentrated, the way he does everything, no word spent that doesn't need spending. He tells her about the Mirror of Erist. He tells her that he found it by accident, that he stood in front of it for a long time, that he saw his family. She sits with this letter for a while before responding. What she writes back is careful. She tells him what the mirror is, what Dumbledore says it does to people who stay too long, why it cannot tell him anything true. She tells him this because he needs to know it, and because one of the things she has decided, in 5 years of watching and 6 months of being his friend, is that Harry Potter is owed the truth. Completely, without management. She adds, at the end, in smaller writing, "What I would see is not something I have worked out yet. I think that is a better problem to have than seeing too clearly." Come back in January. He does. Year 2 begins with a car. She hears about this after the fact. Ron and Harry, unable to access the platform, flying a Ford Anglia to Scotland in a car that becomes gradually more invisible and eventually goes feral and lives in the Forbidden Forest. She hears about it on the Hogwarts Express, and her immediate response, which she keeps internal, is a precise taxonomy of everything that could have gone wrong and didn't. Her external response is to look at Harry and say, "Next time, owl me first." He says, "There wouldn't have been time." She says, "Then leave earlier." He considers this. "Fair," he says. This is the word he uses when she is right, and he has genuinely updated. She has noticed that he uses it only when he means it, which means it is useful data. She files it. Year 2 has a monster. The chamber is open. Students are being petrified, found in corridors, stiff and cold, eyes fixed on something not there. The castle frightens itself. The whispers move through the common rooms and the corridors and the great hall and attach to Harry with the particular cruelty of fear looking for an object. It's him, people say. Not everyone. Not even most people. But enough people that Harry hears it, and Hermione can see him hearing it. The way his jaw goes and his eyes go flat, and he moves through corridors with a stillness that is different from his normal stillness. Tighter. The stillness of someone waiting to be wrong about something. She does not tell him it is not him, because he already knows it is not him. This would be the wrong kind of help. What she does, she goes to the library. She finds the Polyjuice Potion. She finds Moste Potente Potions. She steals it, which is a sentence she will never write in the purple notebook, but which is true. She takes it to the second-floor girls' bathroom, which has been out of use for 50 years, which is empty and cold and full of the specific quiet of a place that has stopped expecting to be used. She explains the plan to Harry and Ron. Ron says, "That's completely mad." Harry says, "When do we start?" She looks at him, at the face she has been reading for 6 years, at the jaw that was tight for weeks with the weight of being suspected, at the eyes that are, right now, something she has not seen in them before. Resolve, damned. She thinks, this is what he is when he knows what the problem is, and someone hands him a direction. She thinks, I am going to spend a very long time handing him directions. She does not examine this thought closely. She opens the book to page 89. They start immediately. Third year arrives with a name. Sirius Black. The name comes before the face, before the facts, before anything that could be called information. It comes as a shout through the Muggle news, a face on a television screen. A prisoner escaped from a place no one has ever escaped from. Hermione hears it in the last week of August, sitting in the kitchen at home, and her mother turns up the volume and they watch together. The gaunt face. The hollow eyes, the number across the chest. Considered extremely dangerous. She writes to Harry that night. She does not mention Sirius Black. She mentions everything else, the new book list, the weight of third year's schedule, a book on magical theory she found in a Muggle library that references wizarding practice without appearing to know it is doing so. She keeps it ordinary. She keeps it ordinary because she does not yet know what Sirius Black is to Harry, and she has learned across 2 years of being Harry's friend that the information she does not yet have is almost always the most important kind. She waits. He tells her on the train. Not unprompted, she asks. Directly, the way she always asks when she has decided the question needs asking. Do you know who Sirius Black is? His face does the thing it does when the answer is complicated and the complication has weight. He says, he was my parents' friend. He was their secret keeper. He told Voldemort where they were. She lets this sit in the space between them for a moment. The train moves through the last of the English countryside before Scotland takes over. Ron is quiet, which is unusual enough to be its own kind of respect. She says, "Is that what you believe?" He looks at her. "It's what everyone says. That's not what I asked." The train. The window. Outside, the sky is doing the thing it does in late August in the north, the light going gold and sideways. He says, "I don't know what I believe." She nods. She has the purple notebook in her bag. She will write in it tonight, after sorting, after the feast. She will write what she knows, which is limited, and what she suspects, which is more, and what she needs to find out, which is the longest list. Professor Lupin arrives in a cardigan. This detail matters because defense professors arrive generally with a performance attached. Quirrell had his turban and his stutter. Lockhart had everything about Lockhart. Lupin arrives in a cardigan with a patched elbow and the look of someone who has taught this before and knows that the teaching is what matters rather than the entrance. Hermione decides, within the first 20 minutes of his first class, that he is the best teacher she has encountered. She decides this based on a specific criterion. He is the first professor who teaches them how to think about the magic rather than only how to perform it. The Boggart lesson. The ridiculous. The logic of confronting fear with ridicule, not denying the fear, not suppressing it, redirecting it, giving it a form you can work with. She files this. She applies it to other problems. She will apply it for years. What she is not expecting, the boggart's face when Harry steps forward. She has thought about this, in the way she thinks about everything, in advance, with thoroughness. She assumed it would be Voldemort. The logical answer. The biggest fear. The most obvious object. She was prepared for Voldemort. The boggart becomes a full moon. She watches Lupin step forward. Fast, too fast, before Harry reaches it. Watches him redirect the lesson. Watches him move with the specific urgency of someone who knows something and cannot say it. She watches this, and files it. The full moon. The speed of the intervention. The brief thing on Lupin's face before his teaching expression returned. She goes to the library that afternoon. She comes back with 3 books, and an answer she has not shared yet. October. The Dementors are stationed at the gates. She does not like the Dementors. This is a profound understatement delivered in the flattest possible register, because dislike is not the right word for what happens when a Dementor passes, the cold that is not temperature, the way the light goes, the specific theft of whatever it is you were holding that made the day workable. They pass her in corridors sometimes, the Dementors on the way between classes. She has learned to hold something in her mind before they appear, the specific weight of the library on a Tuesday, Mrs. Alderton, the card catalog, the smell of binding glue, and to press herself against it until the cold passes. She does not tell Harry this. He has his own version, and it is heavier. She has heard, from Ron, about what Harry hears when they come close, the screaming his mother's voice, the last seconds of Godric's Hollow replayed in the cold dark. She does not bring this up. She does not process Harry's worst memories for him. She finds Lupin and she asks him, directly, to teach Harry the Patronus charm. Lupin looks at her. He says, "That's an advanced piece of magic for a 3rd year." She says, "Yes." He says, "I'll consider it." She says, "I'd appreciate it." She says it the way her mother says things she has decided or settled. She does not wait for confirmation before walking away. Lupin teaches Harry the Patronus in November. By Christmas, Harry can produce a full corporeal Patronus, a stag, silver, enormous, moving through the room of requirement like something that has been waiting to exist. She watches him do it for the first time, and something in her chest performs the movement it has been performing since she was 6 years old, the one she spent years finding the right word for. Recognition, not of a face, of a person, finally being allowed to be the size they actually are. December. Lupin's office. She knocks. She has the 3 library books in her bag. She has a list of observed data. She has not told Harry or Ron or anyone. She knocks and enters and sits down in the chair across from his desk, and puts the books on the desk and says, without preamble, "I know about the full moon." Lupin is still for a moment. Then, how long? Since the boggart lesson. He looks at the books. She has marked the relevant sections with small paper tabs. He looks at the tabs. He looks at her. She says, "I'm not going to tell anyone. I want to be direct about that so we don't spend time on it. What I want to know is whether it has anything to do with Sirius Black." A very long pause. She waits. She is good at waiting. She has been practicing for 6 years. He says, "Sirius Black and I were at school together." She says, "I know." He says, "He was not always what he became." She says, "I know that too. Or I suspect it." The evidence for his guilt is entirely testimonial, and the only witness is Peter Pettigrew, who is dead, and I have been thinking about that. Lupin looks at her with an expression she has not seen on a teacher's face before. Not surprise. Something more careful than surprise. The expression of someone recalibrating what they thought they were dealing with. He says, "You should be careful. The things you're thinking about have consequences." She says, "Most true things do." Sirius Black is in the castle by June. This is how it happens. The Whomping Willow, the tunnel, the shrieking shack, Ron's broken leg, the rat, the man with the hollow eyes and the gaunt face from the television screen who is, in the lantern light of the shack, someone she can read, can see the intelligence in, the grief in, the specific quality of a person who has been somewhere terrible for a very long time and has survived it by holding on to something. He held on to Harry. She watches Sirius look at Harry in the shrieking shack, and she understands something she had theorized but not felt until now. That Sirius Black has been innocent for 12 years, and the knowledge that kept him sane was Harry. Just Harry. The fact of Harry existing somewhere in a world Sirius couldn't reach. She thinks about number 4. About the front border. About the cupboard under the stairs with the shelf pressing closer each year. She thinks he should have been able to reach him. She thinks he will now. The night turns badly. Pettigrew escapes. Buckbeak is scheduled for execution. Sirius is in the tower, and the Ministry's answer is a Dementor's kiss, which is the answer the Ministry reaches for when it wants to close a question without examining it. She will not let them close this question. She turns to Harry. She says, "We need to go back." He says, "Back where?" She looks at the hourglass around her neck. Dumbledore's doing, produced at the start of term to solve a scheduling problem, used all year in the narrow, legitimate way. She has kept it around her neck for 9 months, and she has thought about it the way she thinks about everything, thoroughly, in advance, with attention to what it makes possible. She says, 3 hours. Buckbeak, the tower. In that order. He looks at the hourglass. He looks at her. He says, "You've thought about this." She says, "I've thought about everything." They turn the hourglass. The world folds. They go back. Sirius leaves on Buckbeak just before midnight, just before the Ministry arrives, just before the question closes. He goes north, or east, or somewhere that is not the tower. He goes free. In the morning he sends Harry a letter. It is brief. It contains 2 things. A permission slip for Hogsmeade, signed with his full name, and a sentence at the bottom in handwriting that is cramped from years of disuse. "Thank you. Both of you." Harry reads it at breakfast. He reads it twice. He folds it and puts it in his pocket. Hermione looks at the side of his face and sees something settled, something that did not exist before last night, the specific quality of a person who has learned, for the first time, that they have someone who is theirs, not a guardian, not a provided adult, someone who chose. He looks up. She looks back at her toast. Somewhere north, or east, Sirius Black breathes cold free air on the back of a hippogriff, and eats, badly, probably, whatever is available, and the cold tea that Hermione will one day make him, that he will drink without complaint because it is made by people who came back for him, is 3 years away. She does not know this yet. She knows enough. 4th year arrives with a cup. The Triwizard Tournament is announced at the start of term feast, Dumbledore standing at the head of the hall with the particular quality of attention he produces when he wants the room, and the hall goes loud with it immediately. The specific loud of several hundred people recalibrating their expectations of the year. Hermione listens to the rules and does what she always does. Maps the structure, identifies the variables, notes what is not being said. What is not being said. How the champions are selected. The goblet. The age line. The impartial process. She writes this down. Impartial process. She underlines it once, not for emphasis but as a flag. She is 14. She has been at Hogwarts for 3 years. She knows, by now, what flags look like. The age line is Dumbledore's. She respects it, which means she does not cross it. Fred and George Weasley cross it with an aging potion that is exactly as effective as she could have told them it would be, and she does not say "I told you so," because she did not in fact tell them so. She considered it. She decided their relationship with caution as a long-term project that a single warning would not accelerate. Harry does not enter. This is notable, because Harry at 14 is the kind of person who in another temperament would find the tournament compelling, the challenge, the structure, the clear metrics for success. But Harry has something she has been watching develop across 3 years, a precise calibration of which risks are worth taking and which ones are theater. The tournament, he has decided, is theater. He would rather be watching. She agrees with this assessment. She does not say so, because he did not ask. He does not always need to be agreed with. He needs to be heard, which is different. On the evening the goblet makes its selections, she is in the common room with a book when the great hall erupts, a sound that travels up the tower stairs and through the door and lands in the Ravenclaw common room as a vibration she feels before she hears it. She looks up from her book. Across the room, Harry looks up from his. They go downstairs together. The goblet selects Cedric Diggory, Victor Krum, Fleur Delacour, and Harry Potter, who did not enter, who is 14 and therefore below the age line, who walks out of the great hall with the expression he uses when the world has once again decided to happen to him without consultation. She falls into step beside him in the corridor. She does not say anything. He does not say anything. They walk back to the tower in the specific silence that is not absence, but presence. Two people in the same weight, carrying it the same way. At the foot of the tower stairs she says, "We'll figure out the first task." He says, "I know." She says it anyway because some things need to be said even when they are already known. The year acquires a texture she did not anticipate, denser than third year, heavier, not unpleasant but requiring more from her in a way she is still mapping. The tournament tasks structure the terms. The preparation is good, she likes preparation, likes the specific satisfaction of turning a problem into a project and a project into a solution. She finds the summoning charm for the first task. She works the egg for the second. But what she did not anticipate is Victor Krum. He finds her in the library in October, sits across from her without being invited, and begins reading. She notices this in her peripheral vision, and finds it, upon reflection, acceptable. He is not performing. He is not attempting conversation. He is reading, with the same focused stillness she associates with people who are comfortable in libraries, and he is doing it across from her, which is specific enough to mean something, but not so insistent as to require response. They read in parallel for 40 minutes before he speaks. He says, "You come here every afternoon." She says yes. He says, "I have been noticing." She processes this. It is an honest sentence, not a polished one. She has a strong preference for honest sentences over polished ones, which is something she has clarified about herself across 4 years of watching people perform interest, rather than having it. She says, "I've noticed you noticing." He looks surprised. Then he is not surprised. Then he asks if she would attend the Yule Ball with him, which she was expecting, and she says yes, which surprises him, and she finds his surprise at her yes more interesting than the yes itself. She tells Harry in November. They are in the common room. He is working through a potions essay with the specific expression of someone who finds the potions essay an obstacle between himself and something more interesting. She says, "Victor Krum has asked me to the Yule Ball." Harry puts down his quill. He looks at her with an expression she reads in about a second and a half. Not surprise. Exactly. The expression of someone who knew this was possible and is now encountering it as an actual thing rather than a theoretical one. He says, "And you said?" She says, "Yes." He picks up his quill. He goes back to the potions essay. There is a pause of approximately 4 seconds during which she can see him deciding something. He says, "Good." She says, "You'll need to ask someone." He says, "I know." She says, "Soon. It's already November." He says, "I know, Hermione." She lets it go. She has made the flag. The flag is placed. What he does with it is his own. December 25th. The Yule Ball. The Great Hall is unrecognizable, which is the point. The table's gone, the floor cleared, the fairy lights distributed through the ice sculptures with a generosity that turns the room gold. She is in blue robes, the specific shade between midnight and cerulean that she chose after a process that was more considered than she would admit. And her hair is what her mother helped with, smoothed into something that is still entirely hers, but arranged, rather than accumulated. Victor is a good partner, attentive without being managing, quiet without being absent. She dances and talks and finds, across the evening, that she is having a better time than she expected, which recalibrates something, The idea of being chosen that was not theoretical is a different weight than theoretical. Harry attends with Parvati Patil, who is gracious about an evening that is not going the way either of them hoped. She sees him across the floor at intervals. He is present the way he is present, when he is not entirely present, the body performing the event, the rest of him somewhere else. At 10:30 she excuses herself from Victor and goes to get water, and she finds Harry at the edge of the floor, glass in hand, watching the dancing with the expression she has no name for yet. She stands beside him. The music is something slow. He says, "You look." He stops. She waits. He says, "It's strange." She says, "What is?" He says, "You look the same." He is looking at her. And not the same. She does not know what to do with this, so she does not do anything with it. She drinks her water. The fairy lights do something particular to the angle of the room. Midnight. The ball ends at 12, and the students begin the long migration back to towers and dungeons, and the castle settles into its late-night register. She is not ready to go up. She slips through the side door to the rose garden, which is heated by some enchantment she has not identified yet, which is on her list. The roses are white. The fairy lights from the hall carry through the stone windows in a low gold thread. It is cold outside the enchantment, and warm inside it, and the combination makes the air feel particular. The kind of air that has its own character. That you remember later, not because of what happened in it, but because of what it felt like to breathe. She sits on the stone bench and takes off one shoe and rubs her heel, which is the honest thing to do when your heel hurts. Harry comes through the door 7 minutes later. She counted without meaning to. He sees her. He comes and sits on the other end of the bench. He takes off his glasses and rubs the bridge of his nose, which is what he does when he is tired of looking at something. They sit in the rose garden in the gold light and the cold air, and the particular silence they have been building for 9 years, since a front border in September, since a mythology book left on a low wall, since a doorstep in July, since a library table with a wobbly leg that the library never got around to fixing. She does not know how long they sit there. At some point he says, without preamble, when this is over. She says, when what is over? He says, all of it. School, the tournament, whatever's coming after. When it's done. He is looking at the roses. What do you want? She thinks. Not performing thought. Actually thinking. Which takes a moment because the question is real. She says, ordinary time. The kind no one's given us a schedule for. He looks at her. The fairy lights from the hall do something to the angle of his face. She looks at the roses. He says, yeah. The music from inside the castle reaches them faintly. Something ending. Something else beginning. Neither of them moves. She is 15 and she does not yet have the word for this, for what is in the rose garden at midnight between the end of one song and the start of another, for the quality of sitting beside someone and feeling the weight of the air shift into something she wants to stay inside. Later, she will have the word. For now she closes her eyes, and the fairy lights are gold through her eyelids, and he is 3 feet away, and the roses are white, and the night is cold outside the enchantment and warm inside it. And she breathes, and she stays, and the night holds them there a little longer. This is the moment. She will know it, looking back. She does not need to name it yet to know it is the moment. Voldemort returns on a Tuesday. She finds out the way she finds out most things that happen to Harry when she is not beside him. After. The graveyard. The cup. Cedric, she finds out in the hospital wing at 2 a.m, sitting in the chair beside his bed that she has pulled close enough that she can see him breathing, which is the only metric that matters right now. He tells her in pieces. Not because he is withholding, he does not withhold from her, has not for years, but because the pieces are not yet assembled into a shape he can hold, and speaking them is part of the assembly. She listens. She does not move. She does not say it's all right because it is not all right, and she does not say you're safe, because safe is not the right word for what he is. Here, now. In the hospital wing with Madame Pomfrey's calming draught wearing off, and the memory of a graveyard sitting on his chest like a stone. What she says, when he is done, is, I'm here. He says, I know. She says, I'm going to be here when it gets worse. He looks at her. She says, it's going to get worse. I want you to know I know that. And I'm not going anywhere. He looks at the ceiling for a long time. The hospital wing is quiet. Somewhere down the corridor, Madame Pomfrey moves through the dark with a lamp. He says, okay. This is what she needed him to say. Not because she required his permission. Because she needed him to receive it, to take the thing she was offering, and put it somewhere in his chest where it would stay. She pulls her chair an inch closer. She picks up her book. She reads until he falls asleep, which takes 40 minutes. And then she keeps reading, because she does not want him to wake up and find the chair empty. 5th year is the year the Ministry decides Harry is lying. She watches this happen with a precision that is the intellectual version of fury, seeing exactly what is being done, understanding exactly why, being unable to stop it without tools she does not yet have. Fudge's logic is the logic of institutions when they would rather be wrong than frightened. The fear is too large, the implication too destabilizing, and so the institution turns its energy toward making the person who is frightened into the problem. He is lying. He is disturbed. He is seeking attention. She has heard this before, not from a minister of magic, from a woman with a casserole on Privet Drive. She recognizes the shape. Dolores Umbridge arrives with a cardigan and a hem full of cats, and a voice that sits in the upper register of pleasant, which is where the most dangerous voices live. She watches Umbridge take the defense against the dark arts position and immediately move to control it. No practical magic, no preparation for what is coming. A curriculum designed for an exam rather than a war. This is the thing she cannot allow. She is 15, and she has been watching Harry be failed by institutions his whole life, by the ministry that did not check on him at Privet Drive, by the school that did not notice the cupboard, by the system that produced Azkaban and called it justice. She is not going to watch the school fail him now by teaching them nothing that will keep them alive. She brings it up on a Tuesday in October. The three of them at the Ravenclaw table, the common room late and quiet. She says it plainly. They need to learn defense properly, from someone who has actually used it. Ron says, who? She looks at Harry. Harry looks at the table. She says, you've faced Voldemort 4 times. You've produced a corporeal Patronus at 13. You've cast a killing curse counter in a graveyard against the actual Voldemort and survived. A pause. Who would you rather learn defense from? Harry looks up. He says that's not the same as teaching. She says, it's the same as knowing. A long pause. Ron is very still, which is how she knows he is taking it seriously. Harry says, if I'm teaching, you're planning. She says, I'm already planning. Dumbledore's army meets for the first time in the Hog's Head on a Saturday in November. She wrote the sign-up sheet. She drafted the terms. The protean charm on the coins was 2 weeks of evenings. A piece of magic that required something she had to teach herself from a theory text and then apply without instruction, which is a different skill from learning with instruction, and one she is quietly proud of. Moody would call it constant vigilance, but Moody was not Moody. And the phrase has a complicated residue now. She watches Harry teach. This is, she will think later, one of the things she did not fully anticipate, how completely he is himself when he is doing this. Not performing authority, not managing the room, just showing them. The specific, patient quality he brings to it. He has the instinct of someone who learned by doing, rather than by being taught, which means he knows how to break a thing down to its moving parts, and move through those parts in order, and he knows, because he learned this way himself, where the places are where it stops making sense, and needs to be shown rather than explained. She writes notes during every session, not on the magic, on him. Umbridge finds out in April. The protean charm gives them enough warning, the coins go cold, and she gets the members out through the door before the first pink cardigan appears at the top of the stairs. But the damage is done. The room is known. Dumbledore takes the blame, which is its own kind of bewildering generosity, and is gone by morning, and the thing the Ministry feared and called impossible is now the Ministry's official story, which means it is also ammunition. Harry's mood in the weeks after is the specific kind of dark that is not despair but its functional cousin. The dark of someone who keeps going, not because going is good but because stopping is not acceptable. She knows this dark. She has been watching it from a window since she was 7. She knows that what it needs is not comfort. It needs objects. Things to do. The next step. She gives him the next step. She always gives him the next step. This is what she does. The Department of Mysteries. She does not want to go. She wants to be precise about this. She runs the logic before they leave, and the logic says trap in every variable she can identify. The vision, the timing, the fact that Sirius, who has been careful for 2 years, would not be in the ministry, would not be taken there, would not need Harry to come alone and immediately without consulting anyone. She says all of this. She says, it's a trap. Harry says, I know it might be. I can't not go. She looks at him. She has been looking at him for 10 years and she knows what he is when he is decided, and she knows the difference between decided and reckless. And this is decided. This is a person who has calculated the cost of going and the cost of not going and has chosen going on the grounds that Sirius, who might not be there, is still less acceptable than Sirius, who might be. She says, then I'm going too. He says, Hermione. She says, I'm going too. Not loud. Just final. Run the logic from the other direction. If it is a trap, and you go alone, what happens? Who pulls you out? He does not answer. She says, I'm going. The Department of Mysteries is cold and blue and full of rooms that should not exist. She stays close. She maps the layout in real time, which is what she does when she cannot control variables. Maps them instead. Keeps the architecture in her head. The circular room. The brain room. The time room with the bell jar and the light inside it. The death room last, which she does not look into longer than necessary. The Death Eaters come from the prophecy room. She holds her own in the fight. She has been to every DA session, has practiced with more focus than anyone else, has the specific advantage of fighting while also tracking the room. She moves Harry when he needs moving. She covers Ron when Ron goes down. She does not think about the cost of any of this until later, because later is a category that requires surviving, and surviving requires being present. Dolohov catches her with a silent curse she does not see until it has already landed. The pain is not what she expected. Not sharp. Something heavier. A spreading weight that takes her breath and does not return it. And she is down. And she knows she is down. And what she thinks with the clear, cold part of her brain that operates even here is, note the mechanism. Nonverbal curse, purple light, Dolohov, file it. Harry is above her. His face is the specific color of someone who is refusing to let the thing he is seeing be true. She says, because she needs to say it, I'm here. He says, I know. I know. Stay there. His voice is doing something she has not heard it do. I'm coming back. She says, I know you are. He goes. She stays. She holds the thing in her chest that makes the dark manageable and breathes around it, and waits. The healer at St. Mungo's tells her mother the curse left a mark she will carry but not a wound she cannot recover from. Her mother holds her hand and does not cry until the healer leaves the room, and then cries briefly and completely, and Hermione lets her. Harry comes the second day. He sits in the chair by her bed. He looks at her with an expression she does not have a word for yet. The expression she has been cataloging since the rose garden, the one that is not quite one thing. He does not say, I'm sorry. He says, you were right. It was a trap. She says, yes. He says, I should have listened. She says, you did listen. You went anyway. Those are different things. He looks at her for a long time. She looks back. The hospital room is afternoon light and quiet, and her mother has gone for tea, and it is just them, and the expression he is wearing is very close to the surface. She says, I told you it would get worse. He says, yeah. She says, I'm still here. He looks at the window. The afternoon light does something to the angle of his face. She watches it. He says, quietly, to the window, I know. I don't know what I'd do. She does not make him finish the sentence. She already knows what it contains. She picks up her book. He stays in the chair. Outside, the summer is starting without them, ordinary and indifferent. And they sit in it together. And she breathes, and she counts the living, and this year the count is enough. Sixth year begins with a name she has not encountered before. Horcrux. She finds it the way she finds most things she is not supposed to find, by following the thread of something adjacent until the thread leads somewhere the thread was not meant to go. The trail starts in an advanced dark magic theory text she is not supposed to have access to, which she has access to because Madame Pince has been persuaded, across 5 years of demonstrated responsibility, to treat the restricted section as her section with additional steps. The text references soul magic in a footnote. The footnote references extreme cases. She follows the footnote to a second text. The second text has a chapter with the page torn out. The page is torn out. She sits with this for a moment. The library is its Tuesday afternoon self, warm, dust-moted, the particular quiet of a working room. She looks at the torn edge. She touches it. Someone removed this page deliberately, which means the page contains something someone decided should not be read. Which means the page contains something she needs to read. She writes Horcrux at the top of a clean page in the purple notebook. Under it, she writes what she knows, which is almost nothing. Under that, she writes what the absence of the page tells her, which is more. She goes to find Harry. He already knows. This is the thing she did not expect. She comes to him with the word and the torn page and the notebook, and he sits across from her in their window alcove and tells her, Dumbledore. The pensieve. Tom Riddle's history. The theory that Voldemort has divided his soul and distributed the pieces. She listens without interrupting, which she can do when the information requires it. When he is done, she says, How many? He says, Dumbledore thinks, 7. 6 objects plus Voldemort himself. She opens the purple notebook. She writes 7 and looks at it. She says, We have the diary. Destroyed. 2nd year. That's confirmed. He says, Yes. She says, The ring. Dumbledore's hand. He says, Yes. Also destroyed. She writes, 2 confirmed. 5 remaining. She runs the logic. Voldemort's instinct for the significant, the historically weighted, the magically resonant. She writes, Objects of significance. Personal relics. Founder artifacts. She underlines the last one. She says, he would want containers that match the scope of what he put in them. Harry says, that's what Dumbledore said. She says, then we can narrow it. It's not a list of everything. It's a list of the most important things. Slytherin's locket. Hufflepuff's cup. Something of Ravenclaw's or Gryffindor's. She pauses. And the snake. Harry looks at her. She says, Nagini. She's always with him. She's the most protected thing he has besides himself. A pause. Something that close to him. For that long. It would make sense. Harry is quiet. She can see him running it. The logic settling, clicking into place. He says, Dumbledore hasn't confirmed the snake. She says, Dumbledore confirms things after he's certain. I'm writing it down now. She writes, Nagini, probable. She underlines it twice. The research begins in October and takes the shape that all her serious projects take. Disciplined, cumulative, color coded in the margins of 3 separate notebooks. The purple one for theory. A blue one for Voldemort's history. She reads everything available on Tom Riddle, traces his movements through the orphanage and Hogwarts, and the years between graduation and first rise. Maps the geography of his obsessions. A third notebook, the one she does not label, for the things she is working out that she has not told Harry yet. Not because she withholds. Because some thinking needs to finish, before it can be spoken. What she is working out, in the unlabeled notebook, the Horcrux problem, has a structure. The structure has an endpoint. The endpoint requires that every piece be found and destroyed before Voldemort can be killed, which means there is a sequence, and the sequence has a last step, and the last step is Voldemort himself, which is a problem with a known shape. But there is a variable she has been circling for 2 months. A variable the torn page may have contained. She is reconstructing it from fragments, from the adjacent texts, from the shape of what is missing, from a passage in a goblin history of magical artifacts that references involuntary soul transference in a context that makes the footnotes suddenly, coldly significant. She writes the variable at the top of a page in the unlabeled notebook. What if one of the Horcruxes is not an object? She closes the notebook. She opens it again. She writes, "The Night in Godric's Hollow." The Killing Curse. A soul piece already unstable, violent, looking for a container. An infant on the floor with a wound on his forehead. She closes it again. She does not open it for 3 days. The locket is confirmed in November. Dumbledore takes Harry to a seaside cave on a night she is not part of, which she accepts because she has learned across 6 years that there are things Harry must do with Dumbledore that are not hers to enter. She waits. She is good at waiting. She has been practicing since she was 6. He comes back without Dumbledore. She hears this before she sees him. The castle's quality of emergency travels faster than people do. And she is at the top of the astronomy tower stairs before the crowd has properly gathered, and she sees him below in the courtyard looking at something on the ground, and she knows, from the set of his shoulders, what she is going to find when she gets there. She does not run. Running does not help anything. She walks down quickly, and she gets to him, and she puts her hand on his arm. Once. Briefly. And then she stands beside him and they are together in it, which is what she can offer, and which is, she has learned, not nothing. Dumbledore's funeral is December. The sky is enormous above the grounds, and the chairs are white, and the whole school is there, the whole wizarding world arranged on the lawn to mark the passing of the man who was, for most of them, the reason they believed things would be all right. She sits beside Harry. Ron is on his other side. She watches Harry's face during the service, and she sees, not grief in the way grief is usually performed, something quieter and more interior. The face of someone adding up a column of figures and arriving at a sum they already knew but had not yet written down. After, by the lake, the 3 of them. The late December light going gold across the water. Harry says, "We're not coming back next year." She says, "I know." Ron says, "I know too." A pause. The lake. The light. She says, "I've been preparing for it." He looks at her. "Since when?" She says, "Since the graveyard." She lets him hold this. "I've been building a research base. Voldemort's movements. The known Horcruxes. The likely locations of the remaining ones. I've been working on tracking magic. There are methods that don't require proximity." She pauses. "I've also been practicing memory modification." Harry goes very still. She says, "My parents are going to Australia. They'll have new names. New histories. They won't know they have a daughter until I go and find them and undo it." The lake is very quiet. Ron says, "Carefully, Hermione." She says, "It's already done." Her voice is level. She has decided it will be level. "I did it last week. While they were sleeping." A pause. "My mother has my eyes. I didn't know. I knew. But I didn't." She stops. She starts again. "It was the right thing to do. I'm not looking for a different conclusion." Harry's hand finds hers on the bench. Not taking it. Just. Present. Just. There. She looks at the lake. She says, "We have a sequence. The locket is still to be destroyed. The cup? Probably Gringotts. The diadem? I've been researching and I think it's in the castle, the lost things room. I'll explain. The snake last." A pause. "And one more. One more I haven't told you about yet." Harry looks at her. She opens the unlabeled notebook. She has been carrying it for 3 months. She puts it on the bench between them, open to the page. He reads. The lake. The gold light. The fountain pen marks in her handwriting, small and pressed hard, and the word at the top of the page that changes the shape of everything. He reads for a long time. When he looks up, his face is, she watches it arrive, the understanding, the specific quality of a person absorbing a truth that has always been true. He does not look frightened. He looks like someone who has been in the dark for a long time and has just been handed the right map. He says, "You're sure?" She says, "I'm sure enough to write it down. I'm not sure enough to stop looking." He says, "But if you're right." She says, "If I'm right, we find a way. We find what the killing curse does to a soul fragment, and we find whether it can be separated from the host." She meets his eyes. "I have been researching this since September. There is a technique. Ancient. It requires the host to know what they are carrying and choose to release it." She pauses. "I need more time." He says, "Then we take more time." She says, "Harry," he says, "you've had a year of lead time on me. Give me the notebooks." He looks at her with the expression she has no name for. The one from the rose garden. The one that is very close to the surface now. "I'm not going to a forest to die while there's still a page you haven't finished reading." She looks at him. She writes something in the blue notebook. She closes it. She hands him the unlabeled one. He takes it with both hands. The lake goes dark. The gold light is gone. The three of them sit in the December cold and the work continues, which is what the work always does. It continues page by page, in lavender ink, toward an answer she is going to find. She is going to find it. The war has a texture no book prepared her for. Not the danger. She had modeled the danger, had run the variables, had accepted the outputs with the part of her that accepts things, because acceptance is more useful than refusal. Not the cold, not the hunger, not the weeks in the tent when the forest pressed close and the Horcrux made the air thick with something she can only describe as directed despair. She had prepared for all of this, in the way she prepares for everything, in advance, thoroughly, with attention to what it makes necessary. What she had not prepared for, the specific quality of waiting while Harry sleeps. She takes the night watches. She does not always need to. Ron is here. Ron takes his share. Ron has become, across months of forest and failure, and the particular bonding agent of shared exhaustion, someone she trusts with her life, which is a sentence she would have found excessive at 11 and finds simply true at 17. But she takes more than her share of the night watches, because Harry sleeps badly, and she sleeps lightly, and because in the small hours of the morning, sitting at the tent entrance with her wand across her knees and the forest doing its dark work outside, she can think. She does her best thinking in the small hours. She has always known this. The purple notebook, the blue one, the unlabeled one, they are all products of the small hours, of the silence that falls when other people are asleep, and the thinking can move without obstruction. The Horcrux calculus resolves in February, not all at once. The way solutions resolve when you have been working on them long enough, a piece settles. And the settling of that piece makes visible a piece that was obscured. And that piece settles, and suddenly the shape is there and it has been there, and you can see the whole of it. She sees the whole of it on a Tuesday. She is at the tent entrance. Harry is asleep. The forest is the forest. She opens the unlabeled notebook to the page with the variable at the top. What if one of the Horcruxes is not an object? And she reads what she wrote in September and what she has added since. The month-by-month accumulation of evidence and inference, and the ancient technique she found in a text she had to reconstruct from 3 partial sources across 4 different libraries visited under Polyjuice, across 8 weeks of careful research. Annam Salve, soul release. A technique that requires the fragment to be named, known, chosen against. That requires the host to understand what they carry, and to unmake the carrying. Not death. Dissolution. The fragment released not by a killing curse, but by the host's own refusal to contain it. She has been building toward this since September. She has not told Harry, because she needed to be certain. And she is certain now, and the certainty sits in her chest like a stone that has found the place it was always going to rest. She wakes him at 3 a.m. He is alert within seconds. This is what years of the cupboard have made him. A person who arrives at waking already present, and she sits across from him in the small dark of the tent, and she puts the unlabeled notebook between them, and she tells him everything. He listens. He does not interrupt. He does not look frightened. When she is done, he says, Walk me through the annum salve. She does. Every step. The naming, the knowing, the refusal. The specific form of the intention required. The reason it works where the killing curse would only delay. He says, "Can you teach it to me?" She says, "I already have. You've been doing the component pieces for months without knowing that's what they were." She pauses. The Patronus. The way you hold your intention when you cast it. The thing Lupin taught you in third year about naming the fear and redirecting it. All of it is the same technique at different scales. He is quiet. The tent. The forest. 3 a.m. He says, "So I don't have to die." She says, "Not if my research is right." He says, "Is your research right?" She says, "Yes." One word. No qualification. She has not said it without qualification before tonight, because the research was not finished before tonight. Tonight it is finished. She says it without qualification, because that is what it deserves. He looks at her for a long moment. Then he lies back down. He stares at the tent ceiling. He says, "Okay." She says, "Okay." He is asleep again in 4 minutes. She sits with the notebook in the quiet and watches him breathe. And something in her chest that has been carrying a specific weight since September shifts, slightly, toward something lighter. The tether declaration does not happen in a significant location. She wants to be precise about this because she has read enough stories to know that the significant moments are supposed to happen in significant locations, at the top of towers, in rose gardens with fairy lights, in the great hall with the candles all lit. This one happens in a forest in March, in the mud outside the tent, because they have been arguing about the sequence of the final push, and the argument has clarified something, and she is done waiting for the right location. Harry is sitting on a fallen log. She is standing. They have been disagreeing about the order of operations, the diadem, then Gringotts, then Nagini, and the disagreement has not been resolved, but has been set aside, because they have reached the point in the disagreement where the remaining distance between their positions is smaller than the energy required to close it. She sits on the log beside him. The forest is the forest. Cold. March. The mud going soft. There are no fairy lights. There is no music. There is the sound of the forest and their own breathing, and the distant drip of something thawing. She says, "I want to tell you something." He turns to look at her. She says, "Not about the sequence." "About?" She stops. She starts again. She is Hermione Granger, and she has a very large vocabulary, and she chooses her words with precision, and she is choosing these words very carefully, which is why it takes a moment. About why I'm here. He waits. He is very good at waiting, when he knows the waiting matters. She says, "A park bench. September sun. She is looking at the trees. I must have been 6. You were 5. You were in the front border of number 4, and I was standing on the pavement with 4 books, and I looked at you, and something happened that I didn't have a word for." He is very still. She says, "I have the word now." She says, "A window. Seen from across a garden, seen from a bedroom in number 6, watching a boy who flinched before the window was open. 40 minutes beside a fence. A biscuit that wasn't offered. A pause. I learned to hold things in my chest so they wouldn't show on my face. I learned that from watching you. You didn't know you were teaching me. The trees, the mud, the drip of something thawing." She says, "A mythology book, left on a low wall. Then 36 more." She pauses. 37. She hears him breathe. She says, "A note. 3 words. I kept it in the purple notebook between the October and November lists, and I never showed it to anyone, and I moved it to every new notebook when the old one filled. It is in my bag right now. It has been in my bag since 1989. She looks at him. His face is the expression she has been cataloging since the Rose Garden, since the Great Hall in 5th year, since the hospital wing chair, since every moment in between. She has the word for it now. She has had the word for a while. She has been waiting for the right moment to use it. She says. A doorstep. 40 minutes in July. Vernon Dursley in the doorway, and a girl with a school bag and a lie about a history project that I delivered in the exact tone my mother uses for things she has decided are already true. She pauses. I was not performing that day. I was protecting something I was not yet able to name. I know what it was now. She says. A table with a wobbly leg that the library never fixed. A Ravenclaw common room at 4 a.m, which is the most peaceful I have ever been. A rose garden with the fairy lights still on, an ordinary time that was ours for exactly one night. She pauses. Every terrible cup of tea I made Sirius in his kitchen at Grimmauld Place, and he drank without complaint and looked at us over the rim like we were the reason the tea was worth drinking. She says, lavender ink. 11 notebooks. The Mythology one read 3 times. She says, I want ordinary time. The kind that's ours. Not granted. Not scheduled. Not survived toward. She meets his eyes. I want the version of time that has no one in it deciding what we're allowed to do with it. I want it with you. A very long pause. He says, Hermione. She says, I know. He says, since when? She says, since a Tuesday in September 1985 when I was standing on a pavement with 4 books. She pauses. I didn't have the word. I have it now. He reaches over, he takes her hand. Not the way he took it on the bench in 5th year, present but careful, there but not taking. He takes it the way you take something you are not going to put down. He says, I wrote that note 9 times before I wrote the one I left on the wall. She says, I know. I could tell from the pressure of the pen. He laughs. It is a short, real sound. The laugh she likes best. The one that arrives before he decides to have it. He says, ordinary time. She says, ordinary time. His hand is warm. The forest is cold. March is doing what March does, ending, slowly, making space for something that is not winter. She does not let go of his hand. She counts the living. The count is enough. The count is more than enough. She says, quietly, to the trees and the mud and the thawing and the ordinary unglamorous March morning, good. Just that. Just the one word. It is sufficient. The war ends on a Thursday, not with a speech, not with a ceremony, with a sound, the specific sound of the castle going quiet after a very long time of not being quiet. The sound of hexes ceasing and voices dropping, and the great hall filling with people who are sitting down because their legs have decided, without consultation, that standing is no longer necessary. She is in the entrance hall when it ends. She knows it has ended, not because someone tells her, but because the quality of the air changes. The specific pressure that has been building since September lifts, and the lifting is not gradual. It is immediate. And she stands in the entrance hall and breathes the air of after, and takes stock. She is alive. She runs the count. Harry, Ron, Ginny, Sirius, who was not in the castle tonight, and is therefore not in the entrance hall tonight, and is therefore, she does her calculation. Home. Luna. Neville, the count goes on. She runs it 3 times because 3 times is what the count requires. The count holds. She sits down on the entrance hall steps. She does not perform anything. She sits down because sitting is what is needed, and she does it, and she breathes, and she holds the count in her chest where it will stay. Harry finds her 11 minutes later. He is not performing anything either. He sits beside her on the step, close enough that she can feel the warmth of him through her sleeve, and he does not say anything. And she does not say anything, and the entrance hall moves around them with the particular motion of people who are beginning to understand that they are allowed to stop. After a while he says, Nagini. She says, I know. Neville, he says the diadem. She says I know. Fiendfire. Room of requirement. He says the fragment. She says, I know. A pause. You're here. He says, I'm here. She says, the Anum Salve worked. He says yes. She closes her eyes. In the dark behind her eyelids she sees a torn page, an unlabeled notebook, 3 months of small hours research by torchlight. One word, Unqualified. Yes. She opens her eyes. The entrance hall. The living, sitting down. She says, "Good." The weeks after have a texture she was not prepared for, which is ordinary. Not peaceful. There is too much to do for peaceful. Too many hearings, too many testimonies, too many institutional structures to examine and rebuild, and in some cases dismantle entirely. She throws herself into this with the energy of someone who has been waiting years for the tools to match the problem. The ministry, the Visengamot, the laws that made Azkaban possible, that made the Muggle-born Registration Commission possible, that made all of it possible. She sits in rooms and she argues, and she produces evidence, and she does not stop producing it until things change, which takes time, and which she has time for now, which is the new fact of her life. She has time. She is not yet entirely certain what to do with this. July, Surrey. She apparates to Privet Drive on a Thursday morning with no particular plan, which is unusual enough to notice. She has not been here since before 6th year. The street is the same, the managed quiet, the identical lawns, the performed ordinariness of a street that has always been slightly afraid of its own reflection. Number 4 has new curtains. She stands on the pavement outside number 6 for a moment. The house is sold, her parents' house, the house she grew up in, returned to the market when Helen and Richard Granger became Helen and Richard Wilkins of Melbourne, and stopped knowing they had a daughter who grew up in Surrey. She went to Australia in May. She sat across from her mother at a kitchen table in Melbourne, and she undid it carefully, layer by layer. The way you undo a knot that has been under tension, patiently, with attention to the order of things. Her mother cried. Then, she stopped crying. Then she asked 11 questions, which is where Hermione gets it. She goes home in June. Harry's voice, behind her. "I thought you might come here." She turns. He is standing at the gate of number 4 with his hands in his pockets. The specific posture of someone who has been home long enough to be comfortable and not so long as to have settled into anything yet. He has been back at Privet Drive for 2 weeks. Not living here, he will not live here, but sorting. The legal and practical sorting of a life that has been left in suspension since he was 17. Vernon is in Bristol. Petunia is somewhere else. The house is empty and needs to be closed, and Harry is the one who has to do it, which he is doing, methodically, with the thoroughness she recognizes. He says, "I found something." She says what? He holds out his hand. In his palm a folded piece of paper, old, the fold lines gone soft. She knows what it is before she opens it. She opens it. "Thank you for all of them." 5 words, her handwriting. From 1989. She looks at it for a moment and then she looks at him. He says, "It was in the cupboard. Under the shelf, at the back. I must have kept it there." She closes it carefully. She holds it. She says, "You wrote the note 9 times. He says, 8, actually. I miscounted when I told you." She laughs. It comes out before she decides to have it, which is the laugh she likes best in herself, the one that is not performed. He smiles. The particular smile that has been hers specifically, she has known this for years. The one that arrives when she laughs before she means to. He says, "Come to Sirius's." She says, "Now?" He says he's making dinner. He's been making dinner all week. He made a lamb thing on Tuesday that was genuinely extraordinary, and Ron ate 4 portions, and Sirius looked like he might cry. She says, he made cold tea at Christmas. He says, he has range. Grimmauld Place in July is not what it was. This is the first thing she notices. The darkness is gone. Or not gone, but pushed back, redistributed. Sirius has been here since May. Has been doing something she can only call inhabiting the house. Filling it with light and noise and the smell of cooking and the specific energy of a person who has 12 years of ordinary life to reclaim and has decided to reclaim it at full speed and without apology. The kitchen is warm. Ron is already there, leaning against the counter, eating something from a bowl and talking to Sirius with the comfortable ease of a person who has decided that Sirius is essentially a large and only slightly chaotic older brother. Ginny is at the table with a book. The wireless is on, something with a brass section, something that fills the room and requires nothing. Sirius looks up when they come in. He is wearing an apron that he has clearly never worn before, and which looks, on him, like a flag planted in new territory. He says, "Hermione, you're staying for dinner." She says, "I wasn't invited." He says, "I'm inviting you now. Sit down." "Harry, tell her she's staying." Harry says, "You're staying." She sits down. This is, she recognizes, not a decision she made. The room made it for her, and she lets the room make it, which is unusual enough to notice and pleasant enough to allow. After dinner, the garden. Sirius has been working on the garden with the same energy he brought to the kitchen. It is not finished, may never be finished in any formal sense, but it has the quality of a place being tended rather than managed, which is different. There are fairy lights strung between the fence and the back wall, the same kind as the Yule Ball, which she does not think is a coincidence, and does not mention. Ron and Ginny are inside. Sirius is doing something with the wireless through the back window, adjusting the volume until it reaches the garden at the right level, present but not insistent. Music is atmosphere rather than performance. She is sitting on the low wall at the back. Harry is beside her. The night is warm, July warm, the specific warmth of a summer evening that has decided to hold. He says, "My mum had fairy lights. I didn't know that until I found a photograph last week." She says, "What was she like?" In the photograph. He says, laughing. "She was laughing at something my dad was doing. He was doing something with his hands, I can't tell what. She thought it was the funniest thing. She looks at the fairy lights. She says, 'Ordinary time.'" He says, "Yeah." From the kitchen window, the wireless shifts to something slower, something with a piano. The garden is warm, and the fairy lights are gold, and Sirius is visible through the window eating something standing up. The way he eats when he is happy, when he has forgotten to sit because standing and eating is fine. Everything is fine. He is alive, and the food is good, and the people he loves are in his garden. Harry stands up. He holds out his hand. She looks at the hand. She looks at him. He says, "There's no one grading us." She takes his hand. She stands up. They are not dancers. Neither of them has ever had occasion to become one, though she knows the theory and he knows nothing of the theory, and they are both aware of this. And what they do in the garden is not dancing. Precisely, it is two people standing close together and moving in the same direction at the same time, which is, she thinks, sufficient. Which is, she thinks, enough. The fairy lights, the piano from the wireless, the warm July dark and the smell of the garden and Sirius through the window with his bowl, pretending not to watching. She puts her forehead against his shoulder. He says, quietly into her hair, 37 books. She says, 37 books. He says, the mythology won 3 times. She says, it was the best one. He says, you're the best one. She closes her eyes. Behind them, a park bench in September sun. A window in a house in Surrey. A mythology book on a low wall. A library table that wobbled. A doorstep in July. A rose garden at midnight. A forest in March with the mud going soft. All of it leading here. To a garden with fairy lights and a piano on the wireless, and a man through the window who is alive and eating standing up. And 2 people who started on a pavement in 1985 with 4 books between them, and have been, in every way that matters, walking in the same direction ever since. The piano plays. The fairy lights hold. She breathes. Ordinary time, the kind that's theirs. The kind that has no end written into it tonight. They stay in it a little longer. They stay. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.